Hello all and welcome to another video of the Fireball Archives. So today, the archive we will be consulting is the Drow, also known as the Dark Elves. Drow actually stands for, in the Elven language, traitor, which I'll explain why soon. Alright, so we'll go through the usual statistics like we do at the beginning of every video. So we've got their size is a medium humanoid. Obviously, they're a sub-race of elf. Their alignment can be chaotic evil or neutral evil or even lawful evil in some cases. Obviously, you got challenge ratings, which is a quarter for the normal Drow. Drow Elite Warriors 5, Drow Mage 7, Drow Priestess Odloth 8, and Drow Gunslinger, which is 4. Obviously, for the Drow, because they're I'll do the creation story of the elves soon, but obviously Loth is the patron deity. Also, Loth also used to be known as Arashini when she was Corellon Lorethian's consort or wife. Obviously, because they live underground, they've got better vision than most surface elves, so they've got dark vision, whereas surface elves tend to have low light vision. Like a normal elf, their average lifespan is up to 750 years. Their homeland's the Underdark. And then you got languages. So, the Drow languages that they have is Common and Elven. They've got also Uncommon and Drow Sign Language. But with the Elven Sign Language, they have something called Drow Dialect that they also incorporate into the normal Elven language they use. Their favourite terrain is underground. So if you're a ranger and your party's going on the ground, you do your favourite terrains underground. Also, so everyone knows what Drow is basically like. Their skin colours tend to be almost, pitch black, dark blue or grey. Then their hair is usually white. Eye colours tend to be, the most common of a Drow elf's eye colour is red, but it can also be a shade of lavender, blue, purple or amber. Now, obviously, with being an elf, the distinctions that you can tell them apart. They've got the pointed ears, like all elves do. They're slim. They have a slim but athletic build, so probably a bit more bulkier than the moon elves and the sun elves. Obviously, they're beautiful. They have an affinity for darkness, hence being on the ground. Yeah, they're able to sleep. They're able to enter a fully aware sleep state, also known as trance. Now, the average height for a female Drow elf is 4 inches and 7 feet, or 4 inches and 7 feet to 5 inches and 5 feet, which is 140 centimeters to 170 centimeters. The average weight is 82 pounds to 152 pounds, which is 37 kilograms to 68.9 kilograms. For the male, the average height is 4 inches and 7 feet to 5 feet. 5 inches and 5 feet. Basically the same. So, 140 centimeters to 170 centimeters for the same height for the females. The average weight is a little bit different though. Males tend to weigh more, with being 87 to 157 pounds, or 39 kilograms to 71.2 kilograms. They're based on dark elves from the Norse mythology and Drow from Scottish folklore. Now, the Drow, they're also known as the Dark Elves, Deep Elves, Night Elves, or sometimes the one who went below on the surface. And the Dark Ones they're known as the Dark Ones among Orcs. They are a dark-skinned subrace of elves that predominantly lived in the Underdark. They were hated and feared due to their cruelty, although obviously with every race that's evil, there are some non-evil Drow, and a small number of the Drow existed who were good-natured. Those ones often follow Islestray, or maybe even sometimes Corellon in some circumstances. Obviously, in many ways they resembled Eladrin and elves. Their bodies were weary and athletic, while their faces were chiseled and attractive. For height and weight, Drow were often shorter and thinner than other subraces of elves. My bad. I thought they would be a bit bigger than... Oh, no. Yeah. Oh, well, the drow race often tends to favor the females a bit more because Loth, if you think it, because Loth only gives clerical spells or paladin spells to female clerics. That's why you only ever see female priests of Loth and never male ones. The highest rank a male drow can achieve in drow society, I think, is a swordsmith. I think, but with the females, it was believed that the females were generally bigger. Well, it is believed that the females are generally bigger and stronger than males. They both varied in height from 4 feet and 7 inches to 5 feet and 5 inches, like above. They're averaging 5 feet, which is 150 centimeters. Males weigh between 87 and 157, averaging 1.95 pounds or 49.67 kilograms. Females a bit lighter and weigh between 82 to 152 pounds, averaging 104.5 pounds, which is 47.4 kilograms. The coloration of their skin was obviously, like I said before, dark grey, jet black, or obsidian with shades of blue. An exception were the albino drow, the Zarskai. That's the first I've ever heard of that. The hair for the drow were often long. They always kept their hair long and decorated with pins and webbing of precious metals. So I'm assuming that they might have used, say, the webbing from a sword spider, or because they drow in drow society, if a drow sees a spider, they not to harm it. That's just part of drow society, because a Loth, also known as the deity of spiders, and she's known as the Spider Queen, Loth is. So she's a deity of spiders. I can't remember what else, and deity of drows, obviously. Driders. The enemy that you encounter, there are some enemies in the Underdark known as Driders. They were actually, I think, they were elves. They were originally drow elves, but they were turned into, look like Loth. They were outcasts of drow society. But drow hair could be stark white, pale yellow, or more rarely silver or copper in color. Due to the Australian ritual of the run, drow of other faiths would often say that silver hair was a sign of mental handicap. The drow hair thinned and changed color with age, turning pale yellow in women and silver or grey in men. Beards being elves, drow were incapable of having beards, but some males managed to grow long sideburns and even tufts of wispy hair on the cheek or chin, which I'm surprised, because elves don't usually have body hair in Forgotten Realms. The eyes, drow eyes can be of any colour, with bright red being the most common. The power shades but they have other power shades, which can be nearly white, of blue, lilac, pink, and silver were also frequent. Drow with green, brown, black, amber, or rose hue eyes existed, but they were very rare. Purple or blue eyes indicated surface cells or human ancestry. It was possible to read some information in the eye colour of a drow, so you could tell what they were like from their eye colour. For example, drow eyes redden when they were angry and turn yellow when they were sick, poisoned, or under some negative magical influence. Males drow had white, black, or purple teeth, while their gums, tongues, and throats were pink, red, or purple. Now, drow are very, very hierarchical, and their society is, their society is built on basically slavery. Basically, Loth teaches some of the the goal of the drow elves is to enslave all surface races and dominate the Forgotten Realms. Obviously, that's not possible, because if they were to try, obviously they would have to face the surface elves, the dwarves, humans, and every other race like that. But due to a process of selective breeding that has lasted several generations for the drow, especially the noble drow, looked attractive even when compared to other elves. Their alluring appearance, which would be used for seduction, which was more often used to instill fear, but they often would use seduction. Well, often females would often use seduction to assassinate high-profile targets. Say, when drows are up the surface and then you assassinate someone, often drow females would seduce, say, a high-profile male, like, say, for example, if they found who Lord of Waterdeep was, they would assassinate them. But like if you've seen lore videos on other channels, like Forgotten Realms, there's a good channel. I'll try and put the link in the description. But there's a channel that explains a lot about Waterdeep, Forgotten Realms, the Waterdeep of the Open Lords and the Master Lords. Basically, the Master Lords have got defenses, whereas the Open Lord, they always have to open Open Lord, otherwise it could be confusing. But according to the Goblin, these Goblin names are hard to pronounce. Nordheim, hard to say, the beauty standards of the surface races made them prone to turn a blind eye to the deeds of the Drow, be lenient to them, and also accept them. Now, Drow intelligence. You never underestimate a Drow. You never underestimate an intelligent Drow. Well, all Drow are intelligent, but they tend to be more intelligent, even more compared to surface elves. They tend to be a bit more smarter than surface elves. Okay, so Drow were intelligent even compared to other sentient creatures. This was due to the selective breeding over several generations and to the necessity of being analytical and observant at all times to survive in the society. Basically, that means that often each Drow has a house they're born into. Each house has a matron mother. They never have a patriarchal father. They always have a matron mother, and the house is always led by a female matron mother. Those matron mothers often war between other matron mothers and try to, eliminate the opposing house that they're fighting. But due to their sheer intelligence, the Drow are not wiser than other races. Their upbringing in secluded societies with little contact with the outside, as well as the indoctrination of lost dogma, made them close-minded. For reproduction, the Drow were believed to be more fecund than the rest of the elves. In truth, their fecundity was the same as that of other elves, but they had a higher readiness to birth as many children as possible during their lifespan. The reason they probably have a higher birth rate than the normal surface elves is because they've been cut off from Corellans. So they can enter a trance. They can enter a trance state like normal elves can. I think the Reverie they can still enter, but they can't. They're not reincarnated. They've basically been completely cut off from Avandor, which is the Elven heaven in the Forgotten Realms. So they're not reincarnated like normal elves. I think they just go. I think they're like humans. What if they're obviously most are evil, so they'll often end up in the Nine Hells or the Abyss, depending on their alignment. So they often have a higher fertility rate due to, they not reincarnated like a normal elf would be. So for example, in the evil Lothite society, on average, a female Drow with an active career under her belt gave birth to about 10 children before she lost the ability to birth more. This is why Drow elf houses would be so big, and they were trained from as soon as basically a Drow elf is trained as soon as he or she can hold a sword. Females are often trained in the ways of the assassin. Males are often trained in assassin type techniques, but not as females tend to be a bit more better at being assassins. Wizards who showed arcane prowess will obviously be trained in wizard, or if they're a sorcerer route. But due to the constant warring between the houses, the constant strife kept their numbers low, which drops their actual rate of population growth to dwarf-like levels. Now, blood-related races is what we're up to. There are a number of races and creatures that were in some ways related to Drow. Drow were a race of sub-elves. Their ancestors, the Ilthiri, or Dark Elves, were an offshoot of the Green Elves, also known as Wild Elves. When different sub-races of elves intermarried, there was an equal chance for the child to inherit either of the parents' traits. However, children born of union between a drow and an elf, or I should say, between a drow elf and a surface elf, were far more likely to inherit the drow traits, and were more likely to parent a drow themselves. Dark elves possess these traits too. Dark elves are drow elves. I suppose we're talking about in the history. Because I think drow elves actually made a pact with demons, like demons during the Crown Wars. So that's why they were cut off from Corellon, because they consorted, like they made a pact with demons. So you've got your half elf drow, which is half elf, half drow. The title of half elf drow is known as half drow. So the half elf, this half drow is a half elf born from a drow human couple, also known as a half drow. As a general rule, half drow had no different abilities than other half elves. However, some half drow could gain certain powers through their parentage. Regarding reproduction, the 2-generation rule applied to half drow just like it did to all half elves. Now, this is the one that was before. Zarkai were powdered skinned drow. They were called albino drow, but they had no more weaknesses. To the sun than the rest of the kin. Sorry, drow elves are because they live underground and because they've been underground for thousands of years. Drow, if they're in the sun, they get in the actual tabletop game. Don't think it's in Neverwinter Nights, but drow elves have a penalty to attack. I think it's penalty to attack in reaction. I don't know. I think it's a penalty. I know one of them is a penalty to attack when they're in direct sunlight. But this genetic anomaly is more often found among nobles than commoners. Okay, so the Dragoth were a type of half-fiend, half-drow that was born as a product of a ritualistic coupling between a drow and a Glabrezu. Oh man, how do I say this? The Drowzakel was also called Drow Dragon. Yeah, and they were a type of half-shadow Drow Dragon that managed to split their heritage in two, and thus gain the ability to change their form from a dragon to drow, and vice versa. So they could either choose the form of their dragon or drow, and I think they gain the abilities of whatever form they were in at the time. Now, the Zekel. The Zekel were a winged type of half-shadow dragons. The half-shadow drow dragons with a predisposition for thievery, stealth, and assassination. Azar Ithra was a type of shadow draconic drow with a talent for sorcery. Now, related races by transformation. Some races were not related to the drow because they were born from them, but because they were transformed from a drow. Now, a Chi Denture, I don't know what Chi Denture is, but they apparently originated from a drow who failed one of Loth's tests. A Drider. Driders were created from drow who failed the test of Loth. A Shun originated from a female drow who failed Loth, losing her favour. So, for example, a priestess of Loth who lost the favour of Loth. A Veyrath was a type of petitioner of Veyrun. So, Veyrun is actually... Sorry, Veyron and Illustrate are the children of Corellon and Loth when Loth was still Arashni. And before she was transformed into the Spider Queen. Okay, so lifespan. The drow had lifespans far beyond those of humans and comparable with the rest of the elven race. Provided they did not meet a premature and violent end, which was often the case for the drow elves, they could live for centuries. Generally, a drow's natural lifespan ran up to 750 years, which is the average lifespan for all elves, including surface elves, and about 94% of natural deaths occurred before 800 years of age. However, drow who could afford a lifestyle that spared them hardships, like the Matrimothers, could live more than 1,000 years. Though, by that point, they became withered by age. Now, lost magic could maintain a matron's life for thousands of years. This was considered a clear sign of favour from the goddess. Now, aging signs. The drow started to show signs of aging when they aged near 600 years old. One of those signs consisted of their hair growing thin and turning yellow in females and silver or grey in males. Now, for the personality, the part where I've been looking forward to speaking about. Drow, by reputation, basically their entire race is almost evil, with the exception of the good-natured drow who follow Eilstray. The teachings of Lolth represented the standard moral code for most of the race. They were overall decadent, but managed to hide it under a veneer of sophistication. They were arrogant. Well, drow are arrogant, ambitious, sadistic, treacherous, and hedonistic. From birth, the drow were taught they were superior to other races. That includes other surf cells, humans, the other, like demi-humans, orcs, and everything like that. Basically, in that the other races other than drow should be crushed beneath them. So unlike inherently evil creatures like orcs, the evil of drow wasn't of inherent nature. They were enforced by the way of Lolth, leading to a race of emotionally stunted people, with a tenuous grasp on sanity and scarred mentalities, among which relatively undamaged minds were considered abnormal. However, as mentioned above, the drow had no innate drive towards evil, and their morality was coloured by the society they lived in. So if... Oh god, sorry, the cat's just done a... Basically, the society they lived in, if they got rid of all of the lost teachings, they would... It'll take probably quite a few years, but they would eventually become good-natured again. Give me a minute, my cat's just done... Sorry about that, the cat just went to the toilet, and it's not the most nicest smell. Alright. So, back on to the task. So, the goals of the drow. Most drow's personal goal was about increasing a station in life, which is most daughters of the matron mothers of each drow house would often try to overthrow the matron mother by, well, trying to kill them, basically. They desired power on others that a higher station will provide. But due to being in the Underdark, the scarcity of resources and the limited chances for advancement within the society forced most drow to aggressively compete with each other. However, as mentioned above, they managed to hide their traits behind a veneer of sophistication. For example, while they like to assassinate their competition, doing so and being exposed would bring punishment from being too overt about it, as would open murder. Now, rising through the ranks too quickly was dangerous for any drow. The usual reaction was the formation of temporary alliances among those who were wronged by the quickly ascending drow to take the ladder down. Such alliances were often very successful. Now, the drow were a violent race, and violence was their most favourite pastime, if not instinctive method for conflict resolution. The drow managed to fight this urge when waiting for a more propitious time to strike. Their arrogance, drow believed themselves to be the apex creature. They were arrogant to the point of being incapable of viewing other creatures as their equal, including their own kind. Every single drow believed themselves to be the best example of their superior species. This attitude was condoned by some of the gods. Veyron, the god of arrogance. The drow god of arrogance, and one of the Dark Seldarine. The treatment reserved by the drow to members of other races ran the entire gamut, from pets to slaves to grudgingly respected partners, when they proved themselves a military match for them, though never equals. Now, for the cruelty, as a general rule, drow living within a Lothite society couldn't afford to show emotions like passion or love, for they were very easy to exploit. Their environment turned them into distrustful sadists, with a constant readiness to backstab people both in a figurative and a literal sense. The drow had a tendency to prefer emotional cruelty over a physical one. Cruelty was also seen as a mean of self-validation. The drow believed that any person that could not defend himself deserved to be inflicted cruelty, and be delivering cruelty on a weaker creature that drow could prove their superiority. Now, the fear of them. The constant strife of their society led the drow to be paranoid and fear everyone and everything. They feared the potential loss of their station, the loss of lost favour, the loss of loyalty, or outright rebellion of their underlings, and the potential punishment from their superiors. Hedonism. Drow were hedonists. They loved and surrounded themselves with what they considered beautiful, generally without paying attention to the cost. They generally believed to be entitled to do whatever they want, whenever they want to do it. This also extended to their partners. For example, They took and discarded lovers at their leisure and had a tendency to be lecherous. Now, for their trust, Drow were incapable of trusting other creatures, no matter their race. They were taught from an early age to be distrustful, as the Drow culture expected individuals to advance at the expenses of others by any means, including treachery and even outright murder. When the Drow understood the value of forging bonds, they did not see the value in the virtue of honesty. Forming bonds was thus a dangerous endeavour and mostly of temporary nature. Since any alliance with a Drow or cordial relationship can end in treachery, the Drow went into engagements of this sort expecting the worst. Alliances were generally formed when the owl was susceptible to blackmail. They were considered weak enough to not be a serious threat, or when cooperation was forced by the existence of a common enemy. Alliances were always under scrutiny for signs of treachery and often ended violently. In fact, the mere inconvenience of maintaining the bond could be a reason to end it. Even in moments of safety or relaxation, the Drow were always alert and constantly expecting attacks of any kind. Therefore, they were rarely surprised when those actually happened, depriving the attacker of an advantage of a surprise. Drow were vengeful people by necessity. Not answering to slights with punishment was easily perceived as weakness by other Drow, and were essentially the same as inviting exploitation, abuse, or even death. For this reason, Kyrian-Selûne, goddess of vengeance, had a significant appeal among the Drow. Kyrian-Selûne is also part of the Dark Eldering. Now, here we go, Good Drow. Good Drow amounted to about 15% of the entire race. However, most of them weren't... Excuse me, sorry, I got something in my throat. However, most of them weren't actually of good alignment, but merely chaotic neutral or lawful neutral. Within the Lothite society, even actually good Drow generally had problems to form a sense of moral for themselves. They generally acted in the same way as evil Drow due to a social pressure and risk. As mentioned above, being soft in any way was lethal in Drow society, and therefore these people often died. It was believed that the good Drow collectively worshipped Ilustrae, goddess of freedom, but the actual breakdown was that the good alone Drow did indeed worship the kind goddess, while the morally neutral Drow's worship was split among Gonodar, Loth, Selvatarm, and Veyron. Only truly exceptional good Drow like Drizzt Do'Urden, the main character in R.A. Salvatore's Dungeons & Dragons novels, they were capable of freeing themselves from lost society. The majority that were found out were sacrificed to Loth. Those who managed to leave Lothite settlements would often die in the dangerous wilderness of the Underdark. As everyone knows, plenty of monsters, dangerous monsters, roam in the Underdark, like Umber Hulks, Beholders especially, Ithalids, or Mind Flayers. You've got the Duergar, the evil dwarves. What's another example? The Gelatinous Cubes as well. The Gelatinous Cubes are a very good example of being in the Underdark. However, among the usually actually good Drow, some followers of Ilustrae lived within Lothite settlements, either looking for an escape with their families, if they had any, or as infiltrators helping the other Drow escape. They were known as the Secret Moon Dancers. However, no good Drow managed to cause meaningful, lasting, or any change for the matter in a Drow city. Furthermore, even those who escaped the cruelties of the Underdark found it more difficult to form long-term relationships than most races did, and had constantly been on the lookout for pursuers who could kill them. Now, Drow had a set of unique abilities. Their physical abilities were more agile and alluring than most humanoid races. This was not a coincidence due to the result of selective breeding over several generations. Like all elves, Drow required no sleep. They instead entered a meditative trance while retaining full awareness of their surroundings, which is meaning they entered the reverie, which is the elven word for trance, what the elves call, the reverie. However, while the elves relive parts of their memories, including those of past lives, the reverie is this. It's when when an elf needs to rest, they'll go into a trance called a reverie. This is all elves. I'm talking all elves in the Forgotten Realms do this. They can sleep, but they don't have control of dreams, which kind of scares an elf. So they go into a reverie. Basically, this is what it is. I'll explain in the video better during the creation myth of the elves, but the elves relive parts of their memories during the reverie, including past lives, their different reincarnations of the elves, of the elf, for example. During the trance, drow normally experience nothing, save for the occasional dream, which they try to interpret, looking for signs from Loth. The fact that drow didn't relive memories of past life during the trances was viewed as an indication that, unlike the elves, their souls didn't reincarnate. So elven souls reincarnate back to the prime material plane when an elf dies. Sight. Drows were sensitive, very sensitive to heat. They had infravision up to a range of 120 feet, 36.58 meters, and learned to discern information from heat patterns and shades. Cold objects appeared grey, while heat was seen in ascending order of intensity as blue, purple, red, and warm yellow. The training and stealth received by the drow included blending in with the heat patterns of their surroundings, much like hiding in the shadows. Likewise, formal education or a lot of practice was needed to read heat hues, as the drow couldn't discern the meaning of various patterns since birth. They also had dark vision up to the same range, but not the low light vision characteristics of other elves. Now, among the elves, drow probably had the best hearing, which is a trait developed by necessity. In the Underdark, the sense of hearing was paramount in foreseeing rock shifts, collapses, and other hazards. It was also a primary means to find water through the dripping sound that it made in the Underdark. Now, drow had a human-like sense of smell, far less keen than in other Underdark races, and then their other senses. Their smells were often dulled in the Underdark. The ubiquitous smell of damp rocks and the fungi riddled the air of natural environments, and the strong incenses and the scent of slaves in drow cities made it difficult for them to develop a keen olfactory sense. Basically, in the Underdark, it smells like a cave in the real world. So they also had stone sense. The drow races, stone sense kind of like I think dwarf races also have this. But the drow races especially was to sculpt stone. About 70% of the drow had an intuitive understanding of how fortifications or waterworks were constructed and worked, and of how to circumvent and control them. Such intuitive learning, knowledge, and direction of richness, dimensions of Sand Vein. They could also recognize drowcraft items by holding them. The touch, drow had long, slender fingers and a keen tactile sense, to a point of being able to read subtle markings on stone as if they were braille. This was used to leave secret messages. Magical abilities. Drow had a number of inborn unique abilities. Oh crap, sorry, the video's gone on for a lot longer than I thought it would be. Okay, so I'll just read these magical abilities out and then we'll stop there, because there's a lot more information here, like, Jesus. Oh, yep, we might have to make this another... This might actually... The Drowers might be a... this Drowers might have to go over the next video, because this is a lot of information I have to go through. Alright, I'll read their magical abilities out quickly. Well, some of their magical abilities. So they had magical resistance, which they had a tremendous resistance to magic. During infancies, it fluctuated between almost non-existent and youth level and stabilized as they grew up. It increased again when they reached adulthood and could be trained even further. The fluctuations of resistance against magic in drow infants was a lethal danger, leading to the development of the potion of magic resistance to stabilize it. Even when a drow's magical resistance was overcome, they could handle magical attacks quite well and had a better chance than any race at resisting them, especially spells that attempted to bend their will. Now, I'm going to stop the video there, so this will be part 1 out of probably, probably a 3-part series of the Drows. I thought I could do it for one video, but the video's already gone off half an hour. Okay, so next video will also be a lore video, and probably the next video after that will also be a lore video. Hopefully I can get it done in part 2, and then we can move on to the Green Elves, which also known as Wild Elves, but we'll see. So, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. And this video will be up pretty soon. I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.